Hey loves, it's Britt. In this video, I'm talking about moon square or opposite to Chiron in Synastry. I've just done the conjunction, that was my last video, and pretty much all of that can apply to these aspects as well. But I wanted to do these aspects separately because they tend to be even more triggering or more complicated or complex and potentially tricky. So let's talk about it. So, first off, I do want to say that they're both very similar, but the square is a more constant form of tension, kind of like the two planets are constantly, butting heads, and like it's a more frustrating, at least I feel like, kind of feeling. And then the opposition, I feel like, is actually more powerful, and there's more of a tendency to flip flop where, sometimes we feel like we're so healed, we're so emotionally connected, we're just like, so feeling nurtured and mothered by this connection, by this person. And then other times we feel like we're, pulling our hair out, going into like anxiety and going into like super triggered behavior in whatever way that our moon or Chiron does that. So it's more of like a flip flop kind of energy with the opposition. So yeah, with these aspects, so I talked about in the conjunction video of Moon and Chiron that there is like a theme of healing the mother wound, because the moon can represent the mother and Chiron is the asteroid of healing, pain, and healing. Chiron will show in everybody their wound that, it's that sign, that house, aspects that are being made to Chiron, those things are really like an ouch place for the person. But once we bring some awareness to this wound and we realize, why we act in this way, sometimes we can be like overly obsessive about our Chiron too, because it also is a part of our purpose. And once we kind of bring some awareness there, it actually is one of our greatest gifts. It's like a part of our sacred medicine in the world, our healing gifts in the world, which is especially significant for people who identify as a healer or someone who shares their heart or their healing essence with others, right? So when we have the moon squaring or opposing Chiron in Synastry, there can be a bit of like over mothering going on at times. It's like we don't know how to nurture and give support in the right way. We either do it in like a super obsessive, like obsessive mothering way, or we don't do it at all, and we both feel unsupported and totally not nurtured and not emotionally connected. So that's one of the main differences I've seen between the hard aspects and the soft aspects, or the conjunction, is that we don't know the right amount of like feminine energy and nurturing energy to give here, because the moon is all about our feminine energy, our nurturing energy, and there's something off here with these aspects where we feel just unsure how to relate to each other. So one manifestation that I've seen of this is that this aspect can actually trigger if the Chiron person has a tendency toward anxiety or, mental health sort of issues. The moon person can actually trigger the Chiron person into like an anxiety attack, or into like, if they have some OCD tendencies, then they're like OCD sometimes around the moon person. Like, it can really make the Chiron person like want to pull their hair out, and it's crazy how intense this can feel. And at the same time, the Chiron person actually feels really guilty that the moon person affects them in this way, because they want to have a healing energy for the moon person. They care about the moon person. They maybe even love them, but for whatever reason, because their Chiron wound is still sort of unintegrated, or still needs, more work, the moon person is just like fingernail scratching on a chalkboard to them, and it's not that the moon is trying to be this way. The moon is our instinctual emotional behavior. It represents our inner child. It represents, our mother, how we grew up, our early family life, and yeah, our very instinctual inner self. So the moon person is just being authentically themselves, and the Chiron person is just going into like a complete meltdown in some cases. Now, that's a very extreme manifestation you could sometimes see with the opposition, actually, because, like I said, I feel like the opposition is a bit more intense and the potential for like huge extremes is maybe higher. But then at the same time, there's also like more highs and lows with the opposition, whereas it's square is more like we're just constantly like, we're causing each other tension and stress and strain, but it's not quite as extreme as the opposition, because the opposition is like the full moon aspect. It's like we have the potential for like the fullness of the archetypes of moon and Chiron to manifest in their lowest or in their highest. So yeah, it's very interesting aspect to see. I think there's karma being worked out here. I feel like with a moon square or opposite Chiron that if this is in a parent-child relationship, that maybe even, oh, and this is like blowing my mind right now, maybe the one who's the parent in this lifetime was the parent in the other lifetime or something like that. So there's karma around nurturing, around mothering, around even like our childhood, or like there's a very soft spot that we have for each other here where we relate to each other as far as our childhoods go, because there's some sort of resonance, there's some sort of similar pain point here that we both share with these aspects, and it can feel actually incredibly intimate and deep. It can feel like we really get each other, we really see each other on a deep emotional, vulnerable level sometimes. And from a karmic place or a karmic standpoint, there is something to be resolved here, and I think that the Chiron person is really being given an opportunity to gain awareness of their Chiron wound so that they can begin or continue to live out their true purpose in life. Now, the moon person's energy is sometimes going to give them the ick, or it's sometimes going to, depending on where they're at mentally, cause them to go into a complete like psychological breakdown at times. But how is that not valuable? Because if they have that tendency, if they are still in that place with their Chiron and the moon person is causing them to be like that, the moon person is really giving them a sacred gift of self-awareness and showing them where they still have a lot of work to do to gain groundedness and gain stability and gain freedom from this complex that, when you repress it, it actually rules your life more than when you have awareness of it. So there's a huge potential for healing here, as uncomfortable as this aspect can sound. It actually is, it's really helping both of them. So I've talked about how the moon person affects the Chiron person. Now, on the other side, hold on. So on the other side, the moon person can really feel like the Chiron person is like a holder of wisdom, or like the Chiron person is someone that they even look up to in some ways, and depending on where the Chiron person is at with their Chiron wound, if it's integrated at all or a little or a lot, will also show how the moon person is connecting with them or relating with them. But the moon person can feel a very deep emotional attachment to the Chiron person, and like the Chiron person is either their source of strength or their source of pain. Now, in some cases, the Chiron person could even actually be a bit abusive emotionally to the moon person, but the moon person remains extremely devoted and very emotionally involved with the Chiron person. So it's that's one thing to look out for, is emotional abuse with these aspects. but that's not the only manifestation. Now, it's not that the Chiron person means to be emotionally abusive, it's just that how triggered they sometimes get by the moon person causes them to behave irrationally. And you can see the exact opposite happen as well with the moon person. The moon person can be especially triggered by the Chiron person because they're, emotionally what the moon person needs, the Chiron person is not always able to give, especially with the square. There really isn't a lot commonality there, but with the opposition, the moon person feels like sometimes the Chiron person is the exact answer to their emotional dreams and their like what they need to be secure, and then other times they're like the complete opposite. So the moon person can feel very confused by the way that they feel. They can feel very abandoned at times, but at the same time feeling very deep and emotionally bonded and unable to break that bond, especially if there's other plutonic stuff going on. So it's not an easy one to deal with for either party here, but there is a lot of real true emotional caring and connection. And even though they're different, and we're the Chiron person is different than the moon person. They are going in a different direction as far as like their life goals and their purpose and like their healing wisdom of their Chiron. They're going in a different direction from what the moon person needs for emotional connection and stability and safety. Now, depending on how they act, I mean, a lot will depend on how evolved the people are and how they're able to like behave towards each other. This can still be okay. This can still be very deep, and we can recognize that we're different and that, there is a bit of a conflict here, but we care about each other so much, and there's this karmic bond, there's this eerie feeling of like something to be worked out here, that it can work out, and it can show up in relationships that are just extremely emotionally bonded, sometimes even in a bit of a codependency way, like I've said. But yeah, I mean, combined with like other aspects, this can just really heighten the emotionality of the bond and the amount of healing. You're kind of forced to heal with these aspects. It's not an option. You are forced to feel and you're forced to heal. So I'd love to know your experience of these aspects in Synastry. If you have had either one, what has it been like for you? I'd love to know. I actually have the opposition with my son, and I have the opposition with my mom. So that's why I said that about the role reversal. It was like, whoa, something clicked for me when I said that. I was like, wow. Yeah, I'd love to know your experience. And yeah, thank you so much for the requests, you guys. Keep them coming, and we'll talk soon. Okay.